I'm Natalie Harrison, 27, and I never thought I'd become a mother overnight. The wine glass slipped from my trembling hand, shattering across my kitchen floor as I read the email from my parents. We've sold the house and moved to Barcelona. Emily's baby is your responsibility now. 8 months caring for my niece, Lily transformed me from career-focused singleton to devoted caregiver. Then yesterday, they returned unannounced, standing in my doorway with suntanned faces and designer luggage, demanding their granddaughter back. "We're ready to be grandparents now," my mother announced, as if Lily was a possession they'd stored in my closet. If you've ever had family members who treated you like a convenient option rather than a priority, you'll understand exactly what I felt in that moment. Before I continue this story about how my life was turned upside down, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like button if you've ever had to step up when family let you down. Subscribe to join our community of survivors who've faced family betrayal and come out stronger. Now, let's get into how my parents' selfish decision changed everything. My sister Emily and I were always close despite our 3-year age gap. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, we shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams. I was the first person she called when she found out she was pregnant. I still remember her voice cracking over the phone, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Nat, I'm pregnant. Jason doesn't want anything to do with it," she sobbed. Jason, her boyfriend of 8 months, had immediately bailed when she showed him the positive test. Classic. Emily was only 24, working as a teacher's assistant while finishing her education degree. Our parents, Richard and Linda Harrison, were surprisingly supportive at first. Mom even converted her home office into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow. "Every baby deserves a warm welcome," she'd said, carefully arranging stuffed animals on a shelf. Dad talked about college funds and teaching a grandchild to fish. It seemed like Emily wouldn't have to face single motherhood alone. Meanwhile, I was climbing the corporate ladder at Braxton Media, a prestigious marketing firm in Manhattan. My tiny studio apartment in Chelsea was my pride and joy, even if it was barely 500 square feet. Between client meetings, networking events, and deadline crunches, I barely had time to keep my succulents alive, let alone think about children. My life was meticulously organized chaos, exactly how I liked it. Lily Grace Harrison was born on a rainy Tuesday in October. She had Emily's blue eyes and a full head of dark hair. I visited the hospital that evening, awkwardly holding my niece while Emily looked on proudly. "You're a natural," she said, though we both knew I was terrified of dropping her. Still, there was something magical about Lily's tiny fingers wrapping around mine. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. Emily moved back in with our parents, and they created what looked like a supportive environment. I visited on weekends, bringing overpriced baby clothes and taking my turn with midnight feedings to give Emily a break. Then the strange phone calls started. Emily mentioned our parents seeming distant, spending more time on their computers, talking in whispers. "They keep asking how I'd feel about traveling," she told me, as if I could just pack up with an infant. 2 days before their disappearance, Emily called me in a panic. "Mom and Dad are acting weird. They keep asking if I trust you. If something happens, would you take care of Lily?" "Of course I would," I answered without hesitation. "But nothing's going to happen. They're probably just being dramatic." 48 hours later, I received the email that changed everything. "Natalie, we've decided to pursue our dream of living abroad while we're still young enough to enjoy it. We've sold the house and moved to Barcelona. Emily has decided to start fresh as well. She feels overwhelmed by motherhood and needs time to rediscover herself. Emily's baby is your responsibility now. The teenage neighbor Zoe is watching her until 5 p.m. today. Lily's things are packed in the nursery. The house closes next week, so you'll need to clear everything out before then. We know you'll do the right thing. Mom and Dad." I called in sick to work and raced to my parents' house in Connecticut, my mind spinning with confusion and betrayal. Had everyone gone insane? I found 16-year-old Zoe from next door bouncing a fussy Lily on her knee. "Oh, thank God," she said when I burst through the door. "Your parents said you'd be here by noon. I have swim practice at 5. They paid me to babysit until you arrived, but didn't leave any formula." I stood frozen in the entryway of my childhood home. The walls were bare. Boxes lined the hallway, labeled "Donation." My parents' bedroom was empty, except for a bed frame and mattress. The only room that remained intact was the nursery, where Lily's things sat neatly organized. My hands shook as I tried calling Emily. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Where are you? What is happening?" No response. I tried my parents with the same result. Everyone had simply vanished, leaving me with an 8-month-old baby I had no idea how to care for. That night, after Zoe left, I sat on my parents' bare living room floor with Lily asleep in her portable bassinet beside me. I sobbed until my throat was raw, overwhelmed by anger, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. What did I know about raising a child? My apartment wasn't baby-proofed. I worked 12-hour days. I had business trips scheduled for the next month. For a brief, terrible moment, I considered calling social services. Then Lily woke up, her tiny face scrunched in confusion at the unfamiliar surroundings. When I picked her up, she settled against my shoulder with complete trust. In that moment, I made a decision that would redefine my entire life. "It's just you and me now, kid," I whispered into her soft hair. "I have no idea what I'm doing, but I promise I won't leave you too." The first weeks were pure chaos. I took emergency family leave from work, explaining to my skeptical boss that I'd suddenly become guardian to my infant niece. Mark Chapman, VP of Client Services and my direct supervisor, was not impressed. "Family emergencies don't last indefinitely, Natalie," he said coldly. "We're in the middle of the Henshaw campaign. The team needs you." "I understand, but this is literally life or death for a baby," I replied, my voice breaking from exhaustion. I'd slept a total of 7 hours in 3 days. My studio apartment became a makeshift nursery overnight. The sleek white coffee table now held burp cloths and pacifiers. My closet was half emptied to make room for a portable crib. Baby bottles occupied the dish rack where wine glasses once dried. Lily developed a fever on our 4th night together. At 2 a.m., I found myself in the pediatric emergency room, clutching her burning little body while frantically Googling normal baby temperature on my phone. The doctor, a kind-faced woman with gray-streaked hair, examined Lily gently. "First time mom?" she asked, noticing my disheveled appearance. "First time aunt turned guardian," I corrected, then burst into tears, explaining our situation between sobs. The doctor listened without judgment, then handed me a tissue and her card. "Call my office tomorrow. Lily has an ear infection, but she'll be fine. And so will you, but not without support. I have resources for unexpected guardians." That pediatrician, Dr. Rivera, became my lifeline. She connected me with a support group for kinship caregivers and recommended reliable childcare options. Through her network, I met Monica, a retired nurse who lived in my building and offered to watch Lily part-time. "My grandchildren live in California," Monica explained, expertly changing Lily's diaper the first time we met. "I miss having little ones around." Meanwhile, I continued trying to contact my family. The emails bounced back. Their phone numbers went straight to voicemail. I hired a private investigator who discovered my parents had indeed flown to Barcelona, while Emily had taken a flight to Italy with a man named Carlo 2 days before. The investigator found an Instagram post of Emily on a yacht in the Mediterranean, looking carefree and childless. "Finding her exact location will take time and money," the PI explained. "She's moving around a lot. Time was something I didn't have, and money was becoming a serious concern. My savings were dwindling with the added expenses of baby equipment, formula, diapers, and reduced work hours. The family home sold quickly, and I spent a frantic weekend salvaging photo albums and childhood mementos before the new owners moved in. At work, I tried desperately to maintain my performance while functioning on minimal sleep. Colleagues who once invited me for happy hour now gave me pitying looks when I rushed out at 5 p.m. sharp to relieve Monica. My promising career trajectory had flatlined. Yet, amid the exhaustion and stress, something unexpected happened. Lily began to recognize me, her face lighting up when I entered the room. She reached for me first when scared or tired. Her first word wasn't mama or dada, but Nana, her version of Natalie. The first time she said it, patting my cheek with her pudgy hand, I felt a fierce love I'd never experienced before. "We've got this," I told her one night, rocking her to sleep after a particularly difficult day when I'd nearly been fired for missing an important client call due to Lily's doctor appointment. Somehow, We've got this. By the 6-month mark, I'd given up pretending this was temporary. My parents' abandonment and Emily's silence made it clear. Lily was mine now. The realization was both terrifying and strangely liberating. If this was our reality, I needed to create stability, not just survive day to day. You need to think long term, advised Sharon, a 50-something grandmother raising her grandchildren I'd met in my support group. You're doing things backward, but that doesn't mean you can't do them right. With Sharon's encouragement, I began investigating legal guardianship options. Without my sister's formal consent, the process would be complicated, but not impossible given the abandonment. Meanwhile, I started searching for a more sustainable living situation. My tiny studio wouldn't work forever, and the lease was nearly up. The day Lily took her first steps, toddling unsteadily from the couch to my outstretched arms, I made a decision. I snapped a picture of her triumphant face and sent it to my parents and Emily with a simple message. In case you were wondering what you're missing, she's walking now. I've got her. Don't worry about coming back. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. But sending that message felt like drawing a line in the sand. We were moving forward, with or without them. When my lease expired, I found a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Astoria, Queens. The commute to Manhattan was longer, but the rent was manageable, and the neighborhood had parks and family-friendly restaurants. More importantly, it had space for Lily to grow. I can see why you chose this place, my friend Jess said, helping me assemble Lily's new crib. It feels like a home, not just somewhere to crash between work shifts. Jess was one of the few friends who hadn't disappeared when my life changed. Most of my social circle had slowly faded away, unable to accommodate brunches that included a toddler or understand why I couldn't spontaneously join them for weekend trips. Work required more difficult adjustments. After nearly losing my job, I requested a meeting with the company's HR director and my boss. I need a flexible arrangement or I'll have to resign, I stated plainly, surprising myself with my own conviction. I can work remotely 3 days a week and come into the office for client meetings. My productivity won't suffer. Mark scoffed, but the HR director, a mother herself, was more receptive. We've never had this arrangement in the marketing department before, she said cautiously. You've never had someone suddenly become a parent overnight before either, I countered. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the opportunity to continue being an asset to this company while fulfilling my responsibilities to a child who has no one else. After tense negotiations, they agreed to a 3-month trial period. I threw myself into proving my worth, often working after Lily went to bed, determined to show that motherhood hadn't diminished my professional capabilities. Finding affordable, quality daycare was another hurdle. After visiting 7 facilities, I chose Little Explorers, a small center run by a former elementary school teacher. Miss Patel took a special interest in Lily, understanding her unique situation. Children are resilient, she assured me when I worried about the impact of abandonment on Lily's development. But they need consistency and love. You're providing both. As months passed, Lily's personality blossomed. She was stubborn like Emily, but analytical like me, carefully examining toys before deciding how to play with them. She had her mother's musical laugh and our father's expressive eyebrows. Sometimes, catching these familiar traits was painful, a reminder of what she'd lost. But increasingly, we were creating our own memories and traditions. Sunday mornings became pancake day, with Lily helping mix batter from her high chair. We joined a toddler music class where Lily discovered her love of drums. For Halloween, I sewed matching bumblebee costumes, staying up 3 nights straight to finish them. The holiday season approached our first Christmas as our little family of 2. I bought a small tree and we made ornaments from salt dough. On Christmas Eve, as Lily hung her tiny stocking on our bookshelf, I received a postcard. Barcelona's Sagrada Familia gleamed on the front and on the back, in my mother's handwriting. Thinking of you during the holidays. Sunny Christmas here. Love, Mom and Dad. No mention of Lily, no return address, no questions about how we were managing. Just a casual greeting as if they'd gone on a normal vacation. I slipped the postcard into the trash and turned my attention back to Lily, who was attempting to eat a Christmas cookie bigger than her face. This is what matters, I whispered, snapping a photo of her frosting-covered smile. The day Lily turned 1, I hosted a small celebration in our apartment. Monica came bearing a hand-knitted sweater. Miss Patel brought educational toys. My support group friends arrived with practical gifts and understanding smiles. As Lily smashed her hands into her smash cake, giggling wildly, I looked around at our unconventional family and felt a surprising sense of peace. Later that night, after everyone had gone and Lily slept surrounded by her new stuffed animals, I made a decision. I contacted a family law attorney recommended by a woman in my support group. I want to formalize my guardianship, I explained during our consultation, and eventually, I want to adopt her if her mother doesn't return. The attorney, Miss Washington, explained the complex process ahead. Without the biological mother's consent, we'll need to prove abandonment. Have you had any contact with your sister? None, I confirmed. Neither she nor my parents have shown any interest in Lily's welfare for over a year now. Then we have a case, she said confidently. But be prepared. Family court can be unpredictable, and if they suddenly reappear, things could get complicated. I left her office with a thick folder of paperwork and a growing sense of determination. What had begun as a crisis response had evolved into a deliberate choice. Lily wasn't just my responsibility anymore. She was my daughter in every way that mattered. If you've been following our journey so far, you might understand that feeling of when a difficult situation slowly transforms into exactly where you're meant to be. Has life ever thrown you into deep water, only for you to discover you could not just swim, but thrive? Drop a comment below about a time you found strength you didn't know you had. Your stories help remind all of us that we're never alone in these struggles. Now, let's continue with what happened next. When things got even more complicated, the family court system was a labyrinth I never expected to navigate. Filling out form after form, I documented every attempt to contact Emily and my parents, every expense I'd covered for Lily, every milestone I'd witnessed. The temporary guardianship hearing was scheduled for March, 6 weeks away. Prepare yourself for scrutiny, Miss Washington warned during our prep meeting. The court's primary concern is Lily's welfare, not your feelings about being abandoned. They'll investigate your home, your finances, your support system, and your parenting abilities. The social worker assigned to our case, Mrs. Chen, arrived on a Tuesday morning for the home evaluation. She examined every corner of our apartment, opened cabinets, checked smoke detectors, and took notes on Lily's sleeping arrangements. She observed our interactions with a neutral expression that revealed nothing about her assessment. You've made significant career sacrifices, she noted, reviewing my employment history. Your income has decreased by nearly 40% since assuming care of Lily. Yes, but we have enough, I explained. I've built a freelance client base that allows me to work from home while she naps or after bedtime. It's not what I planned, but it works for us. Mrs. Chen nodded. And what's your long-term plan if guardianship is granted? The question hit me harder than expected. Before Lily, my 5-year plan included a director position, possibly an MBA, and maybe eventually meeting someone to build a life with. Now everything had shifted. I'm building a stable home where Lily feels secure and loved, I said carefully. I've started a college fund for her. I'm developing my freelance business into a sustainable agency I can run with flexible hours. And I'm saving for a down payment on a small house with a yard. Something in Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. You've thought this through. Every day since she arrived, I confirmed. The weeks before the hearing were filled with preparation. Character reference letters poured in from Monica, Miss Patel, my support group, and even Mark from work, who had grudgingly come to respect my dedication to both Lily and my professional responsibilities. Meanwhile, I continued working through my own emotional turmoil with Dr. Bennett, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Our sessions often circled back to my childhood. You mentioned your parents were always chasing the next big thing, Dr. Bennett noted during one session. How did that affect you growing up? I recalled how my father changed careers every few years, uprooting us to follow opportunities that seldom materialized as promised. How my mother redecorated the house seasonally but rarely attended our school events. How Emily and I learned early to rely on each other because our parents were physically present but emotionally inconsistent. They weren't bad parents. I found myself defending them despite everything. Just distracted, always looking for something better around the corner. And now they've taken that pattern to an extreme, Dr. Bennett observed gently. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This isn't the first time they've abandoned their responsibilities. It's just the most dramatic version of what they've always done. This new understanding brought clarity, but also grief. I mourned not just the recent betrayal, but the childhood stability I'd never had. Yet somehow, recognizing this pattern made me more determined to break it with Lily. While cleaning out some old boxes I'd salvaged from my parents' house, I discovered Emily's journal from the months before her disappearance. I hesitated, respecting her privacy, but my concern for Lily's well-being outweighed my scruples. The entries painted a disturbing picture. My parents had been planning their escape for months, wearing down Emily's already fragile confidence in her mothering abilities. "Mom says I'm doing everything wrong," she'd written. "Dad keeps talking about how they had to give up their dreams when they had us. They said I could start fresh too if I wanted. Carlo says he knows people in Italy who could help me rebuild my life." More entries revealed mounting pressure from our parents. They showed me websites about how babies need stability, not depressed mothers. Said Natalie has the resources to give Lily a better life than I can right now. Maybe they're right. The final entry, dated 2 days before they all disappeared. "Mom and Dad are wiring money to my new account tomorrow. Carlo booked our tickets. They promised once they're settled in Barcelona, they'll help me get on my feet in Italy. Then we can come back for Lily when I'm ready. Natalie will understand. She's always been the strong one." My hands shook as I closed the journal. They had manipulated Emily, preying on her postpartum vulnerability to orchestrate this entire situation. My sister hadn't simply abandoned her child. She'd been convinced it was a temporary arrangement for Lily's benefit. When I showed the journal to Miss Washington, she viewed it as valuable evidence. "This demonstrates a coordinated plan to place Lily in your care, which strengthens our case for guardianship. But it also suggests your sister may eventually want to reclaim custody." That possibility hadn't occurred to me, and it complicated my feelings further. If Emily returned, what would happen to my relationship with Lily? Could I step back into being just an aunt after being her mother in every practical sense? A week before the guardianship hearing, I received an unexpected visitor. My father's estranged brother, Uncle Jack, arrived at our apartment unannounced. "I heard through the family grapevine what Richard and Linda did," he explained, bouncing Lily on his knee with the ease of a man who'd raised 3 children of his own. "I should have reached out sooner, but I only got the full story recently." Uncle Jack had cut ties with my father years ago over a business disagreement. I barely remembered him from childhood, but Lily took to him immediately. "I'm not here to interfere," he assured me, "but I want to help. I've set up a trust for Lily's education, and I'm willing to testify about the pattern of behavior my brother has demonstrated throughout his life." His support arrived like reinforcements in a battle I'd been fighting alone for too long. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe we might actually win this. The temporary guardianship was granted pending the final hearing. As the judge signed the order, I felt both vindicated and terrified by the responsibility it formalized. This wasn't just about proving my parents wrong anymore. It was about creating the stability that both Lily and I deserved. The doorbell rang at 7:30 on a Sunday morning, exactly 1 week before our final custody hearing. Lily and I were still in pajamas, building a tower of blocks on the living room floor, assuming it was the elderly neighbor who sometimes dropped off baked goods. I opened the door without checking the peephole. My mother stood there, looking tanned and wearing designer sunglasses pushed up into her highlighted hair. My father loomed behind her, his familiar, impatient expression firmly in place. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. "Well, aren't you going to invite us in?" my mother asked, as if she'd just returned from a weekend trip rather than a 17-month absence. They brushed past me into the apartment, wheeling expensive luggage behind them. My father immediately began assessing the space, running his finger along a bookshelf as if checking for dust. "Where's our grandbaby?" my mother cooed, spotting Lily on the floor. She rushed toward her with outstretched arms. Lily took one look at this unfamiliar woman and scrambled behind my legs, clinging to me with small, frightened hands. "She doesn't know you," I said, finding my voice at last. The shock was giving way to a cold, clear anger. "Why would she? You're strangers to her." My mother's face fell. "Don't be ridiculous, Natalie. We're her grandparents. What are you doing here? I demanded, picking up Lily, who buried her face in my neck. We've come for Lily, of course, my father stated matter-of-factly. Our Barcelona adventure was wonderful, but we're ready to settle down now and be proper grandparents. I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound that made Lily lift her head in concern. You think you can just walk back into her life after abandoning her? After abandoning all of us? We didn't abandon her, my mother insisted, setting her designer purse on my coffee table. We left her with you. There's a difference. We always planned to return, my father added. We just needed some time to ourselves after spending 30 years raising children. Is that so terrible? Their entitled attitude left me speechless. In their minds, they'd done nothing wrong. Lily was just an object they could set aside and reclaim at their convenience. Our retirement plans didn't work out quite as expected, my father continued, his tone becoming businesslike. The cost of living in Barcelona is higher than we anticipated. The real estate market there isn't as foreigner-friendly as we'd hoped, and the expat community wasn't what we expected, my mother chimed in. So many retirees just sitting around talking about their medications. Pieces were falling into place. So you ran out of money, I concluded flatly. They exchanged glances. We're adjusting our plans, my father corrected. And part of that adjustment includes being more present for Lily. Where's Emily? I asked. Does she know you're here? Another meaningful look passed between them. Emily has made some questionable choices, my mother said delicately. She's still in Europe with that Italian fellow. She's cut contact with us as well, if you can believe it. Such ingratitude, after all, we did to help her start fresh. The audacity was breathtaking. I thought of Emily's journal entries, the manipulation they documented. You pressured her to abandon her child, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice level for Lily's sake. You convinced her she was an inadequate mother and that leaving was temporary. My father's expression hardened. We gave her an opportunity to restart her life without the burden of single motherhood. And we gave you the chance to prove yourself capable of something more significant than making advertisements. Really, Natalie? We did you both a favor. A favor? I repeated incredulously. I had to completely restructure my life overnight. I almost lost my job. I depleted my savings. I had no idea what I was doing those first months. And Lily, I hugged her closer. Lily lost her mother and her grandparents in one day. What kind of favor is that? My mother waved her hand dismissively. You're being dramatic. Children are adaptable. And clearly, you've managed. But we're back now. So we can take over. Take over? I echoed. Lily isn't a project you can hand off and reclaim at will. She's a person who needs consistency and stability. We're her blood relatives, my father stated firmly. We have rights. And with Emily still abroad, we're the closest family she has. I'm her family, I countered, my voice breaking slightly. I've been here every day for the past 17 months. I'm the one she calls for when she has nightmares. I'm the one who knows which foods she likes and which stuffed animal she needs to fall asleep. That's all very sweet, my mother said condescendingly. And we appreciate your babysitting services. But it's time for professionals to take over. Professionals? I laughed bitterly. You couldn't handle parenthood when you were younger. What makes you qualified now? My father's face reddened. We have resources now that we didn't have when raising you girls. We've purchased a lovely house in Greenwich. We've already interviewed nannies. Nannies? I repeated. So you're not even planning to care for her yourselves? Don't be obtuse, Natalie, my mother snapped. Of course we'll oversee her upbringing. But at our age, we need assistance with the day-to-day matters. Something in their exchange struck me as odd. Why the sudden interest in hands-on grandparenting? Last I checked, you were enjoying your child-free life abroad. My father cleared his throat. Family is important to us. We've always said that. My mother nodded too emphatically. And Lily deserves the advantages we can provide. Private schools, summer camps, ballet lessons. Their answers felt rehearsed, missing the emotional core of what raising a child entailed. Then I remembered something Uncle Jack had mentioned about a family trust my grandfather had established. This is about Grandpa's trust fund, isn't it? I asked, the realization dawning. The one that transfers to the next generation when they're raising children? The flash of panic that crossed my father's face confirmed my suspicion. That's completely irrelevant, he blustered. Though yes, technically, as Lily's guardians, we would manage her portion of the inheritance until she's of age. So you abandoned her when she was inconvenient, and now you want her back because she's financially valuable to you, I summarized, feeling sick. You're twisting things, my mother protested weakly. My father's face hardened as he realized persuasion wasn't working. Look, Natalie, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you hand Lily over to us now. We'll be generous about visitation. The hard way involves expensive lawyers and a court battle you can't afford. We're her biological grandparents. No judge will side with a single aunt over grandparents who can provide every advantage. Get out, I said quietly, then more firmly. Get out of our home, now. Don't be foolish, my father warned. You can't win this. We'll see about that, I replied, moving toward the door. My lawyer will contact yours. Until then, stay away from my daughter. This isn't over, my mother promised as they reluctantly gathered their things. We'll be back with our attorneys. Blood is thicker than water, Natalie. Actually, I said as I closed the door behind them. The full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Look it up. As their footsteps retreated down the hallway, I sank to the floor, still holding Lily. She patted my cheek, concerned by the tears streaming down my face. Nana sad? She asked in her small voice. I gathered myself, remembering that she could sense my emotions. Nana's okay, sweetheart. Those people won't take you away from me. I promise. But as I rocked her gently, I wondered if that was a promise I could keep. The moment my parents left, I called Miss Washington's emergency number, leaving a detailed message about their sudden reappearance and threats. Then I contacted Uncle Jack, who arrived within the hour, bringing his own attorney. They're after the trust money, Uncle Jack confirmed grimly. My father set it up so that the family money would only transfer to the next generation when they were actively raising children. Richard and Linda received their portion when they had you girls. Emily would have received hers when Lily turned 3. But with Emily gone, and you not being a blood relative of my father, they're trying to position themselves as Lily's guardians to control her portion. How much money are we talking about? I asked, horrified that Lily had been reduced to a financial transaction. Enough to fund their retirement in high style, Uncle Jack said. My father was quite successful. Each grandchild's portion is worth about $2 million. The amount was staggering. No wonder they'd suddenly decided to become devoted grandparents. Miss Washington arrived that afternoon, bringing a security specialist who installed cameras at my door and helped me create an emergency plan. We implemented strict security protocols at Lily's daycare, providing them with photos of my parents and explicit instructions that only I or Monica could pick her up. Your temporary guardianship gives you legal standing, Miss Washington explained, but we need to be prepared for them to petition the court for grandparents' rights or even emergency custody based on false claims. The security specialist, a former police officer named Darius, reviewed our daily routines for vulnerabilities. No consistent patterns, he advised. Vary your schedule. Different routes to work and daycare. Be aware of your surroundings. Document any contact or attempted contact. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I began a meticulous inventory of all my documentation. Journals recording Lily's daily life and development. Medical records. Financial statements showing every penny I'd spent on her care. The complete absence of any support from my parents or Emily. Uncle Jack's attorney, Mr. Goldstein, specialized in trust law and began investigating my parents' financial situation. Within days, he uncovered troubling information. They mortgaged their Connecticut house to the hilt before selling it, he reported during our strategy meeting. They've burned through most of their retirement saving. There are multiple maxed-out credit cards. They're essentially bankrupt, which explains their desperate play for control of Lily's trust fund. More disturbing was what he found about their departure. They committed fraud on their mortgage application, claiming they'd continue to occupy the house as their primary residence while actually planning to leave the country. That's federal mortgage fraud. Can we use that? I asked, not wanting to send my parents to prison despite everything. but desperate for leverage to protect Lily. As negotiation leverage, yes, Mr. Goldstein confirmed. Criminal charges would be a last resort. Meanwhile, Uncle Jack employed his international business connections to locate Emily. The search intensified when Mr. Washington suggested that Emily's testimony or formal consent to my guardianship would significantly strengthen our case. My parents wasted no time filing for emergency grandparent custody, claiming I was an unfit guardian who had manipulated the situation to maintain control over family assets. Their petition painted a picture of devoted grandparents, cruelly separated from their granddaughter by an opportunistic daughter. The judge denied their emergency petition, but scheduled a hearing to address their claims. The temporary reprieve gave us precious time to build our defense. Then came an unexpected breakthrough. Monica, checking my mail while I worked late, brought over a package that had arrived from Italy. Inside was a sealed envelope and a USB drive, both from Emily. With shaking hands, I plugged in the drive. It contained dozens of audio recordings. Emily's voice explained in the first file. I started recording their conversations when things got weird. I didn't understand what was happening then, but I knew something felt wrong. The recordings documented months of systematic manipulation. My parents suggesting Emily was suffering from postpartum depression and unable to properly care for Lily, them planting seeds of doubt about her parenting abilities. The gradual introduction of Carlo, a friend of my father's who showed romantic interest in Emily. Most damning was a recording of my parents explicitly discussing their plan to liberate themselves from family obligations while securing control of the trust money. "Richard, are you sure Natalie will take the baby?" my mother's voice asked. "She has to," my father replied. "She's always been the responsible one. Once she's attached to the kid, we'll let a suitable amount of time pass, then swoop back in as the devoted grandparents. We'll control Lily's trust portion. Emily will have signed over her parental rights to us, not Natalie, and we'll be set." "What if Natalie tries to adopt her?" my mother worried. "She won't get that far without Emily's consent," my father assured her. "And we'll make sure Emily understands that signing anything for Natalie means she'll never see a penny of family money." The envelope contained a notarized document, Emily's formal consent to my permanent guardianship of Lily, along with a power of attorney. Her enclosed letter explained everything. "Nat, I'm so sorry. I was a mess after Lily was born, and Mom and Dad convinced me I was dangerous to her. They said leaving her with you temporarily while I got help was the responsible choice. Carlo turned out to be Dad's former college roommate, paid to distract me and get me out of the country. By the time I realized what happened, they'd cut me off financially, and I was stranded in Italy with no money and an expired visa. I've been working under the table at restaurants, saving every euro to get back to you and Lily. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I never wanted to abandon my daughter. I've signed full guardianship over to you because you're the only one who's truly cared for her. I'll return to testify if needed. All my love, Emily." The evidence was overwhelming. Miss Washington immediately filed it with the court, along with a restraining order request against my parents based on their demonstrated pattern of manipulation and the risk they posed to Lily's stability. 2 days later, I received an anonymous email containing screenshots of messages between my parents, discussing plans to take Lily from daycare before the court date if the legal approach seemed to be failing. I forwarded it immediately to Miss Washington and the police, who took the threat seriously enough to increase patrols near our home. The picture emerging was far darker than I'd imagined. My parents hadn't just made a selfish choice. They'd orchestrated an elaborate scheme that destroyed one daughter's relationship with her child so they could eventually control a trust fund. The callous calculation behind their actions left me reeling. Yet amid the legal battles and security concerns, daily life with Lily continued. She took her first swim lesson, learned 5 new words, and developed an obsession with dinosaurs. Each night as I tucked her in, I promised her the same thing. I will always keep you safe. As our court date approached, I received one final piece of evidence. Uncle Jack's investigators discovered my parents had attempted this same scheme before. Years ago, they'd convinced my father's younger sister to relinquish her son temporarily during a divorce, only to file for custody themselves. That aunt had ultimately lost her child and later died by suicide. It was the reason Uncle Jack had cut ties with my father. History will not repeat itself. Uncle Jack vowed when sharing this devastating information. Not on my watch. Armed with evidence, legal preparation, and the truth at last, we were as ready as we could be to face my parents in court. The family court was smaller than I'd imagined, the wood-paneled walls creating an atmosphere more intimate than imposing. I sat beside Miss Washington, Uncle Jack directly behind me for moral support. Across the aisle, my parents conferred with their attorney, occasionally glancing in my direction with confident expressions that made my stomach clench. Judge Harriet Watkins, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, entered and called the courtroom to order. She began by outlining the case: my request for permanent guardianship versus my parents' petition for grandparent custody. My parents' attorney, Mr. Brennan, presented their case first. His polished delivery painted them as devoted grandparents who had merely taken a brief sabbatical to recover from the stress of helping their younger daughter through an unplanned pregnancy. Richard and Linda Harrison have a beautiful home waiting for their granddaughter, he explained smoothly. They can provide Lily with advantages that Miss Harrison, as a single woman with limited resources, simply cannot match. Private schools, cultural opportunities, financial security. He portrayed me as a career-obsessed singleton who had used the situation to reinvent myself as a mother without proper qualification. Miss Harrison has no experience with children. She lives in a modest apartment in an average neighborhood. She has sacrificed a promising career to play house with her niece. But this arrangement was never meant to be permanent. Each word felt like a personal attack, but Miss Washington had prepared me to remain composed. I focused on my breathing, remembering that losing my temper would only hurt our case. When my parents took the stand, they performed their roles perfectly. My mother dabbed at tears while describing how much they missed Lily. My father spoke authoritatively about their financial preparations for her future. We always intended to return, my mother insisted. We simply wanted to provide Emily with an opportunity to mature before resuming motherhood, and Natalie with the chance to experience caring for a child before making her own family decisions. And why did you not communicate with either daughter during your absence? Judge Watkins asked, her first intervention revealing nothing about her thoughts. We believed a clean break would be easiest for everyone, my father explained smoothly. And frankly, we needed time to process our younger daughter's irresponsibility. We admit we could have handled it better, but our intentions were good. When cross-examination began, Miss Washington approached with deceptive gentleness. Mr. Harrison, did you discuss your plan to leave the country with your daughter Emily before your departure? My father shifted slightly. We had many discussions about everyone's future. That's not what I asked, Miss Washington noted. Did you explicitly tell Emily you were selling your house and moving abroad, leaving her child with her sister? Not in those exact words, he admitted. And did you at any point send money to support Lily during your absence? We left the house for Natalie to you. A house you had already sold, Miss Washington interrupted. Please answer the question directly. Did you provide any financial support for Lily's care? No, he conceded. Did you call to check on her welfare? Send birthday or Christmas gifts? Request photos or updates? Each question forced another reluctant no. Miss Washington continued methodically, exposing the contradictions in their narrative. Then came the moment we'd prepared for. Your Honor, we have evidence that the respondent's sudden interest in custody is motivated by financial gain rather than genuine concern for Lily's welfare. She presented the trust documents, the recordings, Emily's notarized statement, and the evidence of my parents' financial misconduct. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Watkins reviewed the materials, her expression darkening. When our witnesses took the stand, the true picture emerged. Monica described the daily care I provided Lily. Miss Patel from daycare testified about Lily's healthy development and our strong bond. Even my former boss Mark appeared, grudgingly acknowledging my dedication to balancing work and childcare responsibilities. Then came the moment that shifted the entire proceeding. On the large monitor at the front of the courtroom, Emily's face appeared via video conference from Milan. Her testimony silenced the room. My parents manipulated me during a vulnerable time, she explained, her voice occasionally breaking. They convinced me I was dangerous to my own child due to postpartum depression. They introduced Carlo, who I later discovered was paid to romance me and get me out of the country. Once I was in Italy, they cut off my funds and communication. I've been working illegally in restaurants, saving every euro to return home. She described finding the recordings on her phone, the gradual realization of what had happened. I never intended to abandon Lily permanently. I believed what my parents told me, that I was temporarily leaving her with Natalie while getting mental health treatment abroad. It wasn't until I heard them discussing the trust fund that I understood their true motives. When asked about her current plans, Emily was direct. I want to return to the United States, but I recognize that Lily has bonded with my sister. Natalie has been her mother in every way that matters. I've signed consent for her guardianship because I believe it's in Lily's best interest to maintain that stability while I rebuild a relationship with her. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red during Emily's testimony. When Miss Washington asked him directly about the trust fund's connection to their custody petition, something in him snapped. "Of course the money matters," he erupted. "We've worked our entire lives to secure our retirement, only to have it jeopardized by Emily's irresponsibility and Natalie's stubbornness. That trust fund is family money, meant to benefit all of us." "So you admit your primary concern is accessing Lily's trust fund?" Miss Washington pressed. "Someone has to manage it responsibly," he insisted. "Natalie would squander it on organic baby food and childcare instead of investments. We're thinking of Lily's long-term financial security." My mother tried to interrupt, but he continued, his facade crumbling. "Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to raise children? We already did our part with our own daughters. We deserve freedom and comfort in our later years, not another round of parental servitude. We were willing to hire whatever help needed to fulfill our legal obligations while maintaining control of the assets." The courtroom fell silent. In his outburst, my father had revealed exactly what we'd claimed, that their interest was financial, not relational. Judge Watkins's expression was thunderous. "Mr. Harrison," she said icily, "are you suggesting that your primary motivation for seeking custody is to control your granddaughter's trust fund while delegating her actual care to hired help?" My father seemed to suddenly realize what he'd admitted. "That's not what I meant," he backpedaled. "Of course we love Lily. We just believe proper financial management is part of responsible guardianship, but the damage was done." When Uncle Jack took the stand and revealed the previous incident with my aunt, complete with documentation, my parents' case collapsed entirely. Judge Watkins called a brief recess to review all evidence before making her ruling. In the hallway, my parents avoided eye contact, huddled with their attorney in urgent conversation. When court resumed, Judge Watkins delivered her interim decision with unmistakable clarity. "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, I am granting continued guardianship to Natalie Harrison pending completion of the home study and final adoption procedures. The petitioner's request for grandparent custody is denied." She looked directly at my parents. "Furthermore, I am issuing a protective order prohibiting Richard and Linda Harrison from unsupervised contact with the minor child pending investigation of the serious allegations raised in today's proceedings. The evidence suggesting financial misconduct and manipulation will be referred to appropriate authorities for potential criminal investigation." My mother gasped audibly. My father's face hardened into a mask of fury. "Miss Harrison," the judge continued, turning to me, "the court commends your dedication to your niece's welfare under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. The stability and love you've provided is exactly what this child needs." As we left the courtroom, my parents attempted to approach us. Uncle Jack and Darius immediately moved to intercept them, but the court security officer intervened, enforcing the protective order immediately. "This isn't over," my father called as they were escorted away. "Blood always wins in the end." But looking at Lily waiting with Monica in the courthouse childcare center, I knew he was wrong. Family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up, day after day, through tantrums and fevers and first steps. It was about consistency and sacrifice, and unconditional love. And by that definition, Lily and I were already the strongest family I knew. 6 months after the courthouse showdown, Lily and I stood on the porch of our new home, watching movers unload furniture from the truck. The modest 3-bedroom house with its fenced backyard and maple trees wasn't far from our Astoria apartment, but it represented a permanent commitment to our future together. "Home, Mama?" Lily asked, having recently started calling me that instead of Nana. The first time she'd said it, I'd cried for an hour after putting her to bed. "Yes, sweetheart. Our home," I confirmed, squeezing her small hand in mine. The months following the court hearing had brought significant changes. My parents faced serious legal consequences for the mortgage fraud and financial misconduct uncovered during our case. Rather than risk criminal charges, they accepted a settlement that required full restitution of misappropriated funds, forfeiture of any claims to Lily's trust, and compliance with the protective order keeping them away from us. They'd moved to Florida, apparently attempting to rebuild their lives among retirees who didn't know their history. I felt occasional twinges of guilt about their diminished circumstances. But as Dr. Bennett reminded me during our ongoing therapy sessions, they had made calculated choices with full awareness of potential consequences. Uncle Jack had become an unexpected blessing in our lives. As trustee of the family assets following my grandfather's wishes, he had restructured Lily's portion to create an education fund that would be available to her regardless of who had guardianship. He'd also established a separate fund to support my growing home-based marketing agency, allowing me to create a workspace in our new house and hire an assistant. "You're investing in Lily's well-being by building a sustainable livelihood that keeps you present in her life," he explained when I initially resisted his financial help. That's exactly what my father would have wanted. The most complex development was Emily's gradual re-entry into our lives. After securing proper documentation, she had returned to the United States 2 months ago and was living in a small apartment near us. Our relationship was tentatively healing through careful conversations and shared memories of what our parents had done to both of us. "I thought I was the only one they manipulated," she confessed during one of our coffee meetings while Lily napped at my place. "It never occurred to me they'd been doing it to you too, just more subtly." Emily had started therapy to process her guilt and the trauma of being stranded abroad. She visited Lily 3 times a week, slowly rebuilding their connection under my supportive guidance. Lily initially regarded her with the wariness of a child meeting a stranger, but they were developing their own relationship. "I don't want to disrupt what you've created," Emily assured me repeatedly. "You're her mother in all the ways that matter. I just want to be in her life, however, makes sense for everyone." We were exploring the possibility of co-parenting, with me maintaining primary guardianship while Emily took an increasingly meaningful role. The arrangement was unconventional, but then, nothing about our family had ever been traditional. The final adoption hearing was scheduled for the following month. Miss Washington was confident it would be approved given Emily's continued support and the overwhelming evidence that I provided Lily with a stable, loving home. On moving day, Monica arrived with homemade cookies and immediately began organizing the kitchen. Miss Patel stopped by with a houseplant and curriculum suggestions for the preschool where Lily would start part-time in the fall. My support group friends formed a painting crew for the bedrooms, filling the house with laughter and the smell of fresh paint. That evening, after everyone had gone and Lily was asleep in her new room, monitoring by both a traditional baby monitor and a state-of-the-art security system Darius had insisted upon, Emily came over with pizza and wine. We sat on moving boxes in the living room, surveying the cheerful chaos around us. "I never pictured this as our future," she admitted, "but it feels right somehow. Like we're breaking the cycle." I understood exactly what she meant. After a lifetime of emotional instability with our parents, we were creating something different for Lily and for ourselves, a family based on choice rather than obligation, on love rather than control. The family court judge made it official 3 weeks later. "The court grants the petition for adoption," Judge Watkins announced, a rare smile softening her usually stern features. "Natalie Harrison is hereby recognized as the legal parent of Lily Grace Harrison, with all rights and responsibilities thereof." Emily stood beside me as the declaration was made, her hand supportive on my shoulder. Uncle Jack beamed from the front row. Monica dabbed tears beside him. We celebrated that evening with a small gathering at our home. As Lily ran through sprinklers in the backyard with friends from daycare, I took a moment to appreciate how far we'd come from that shattering night when I'd found myself suddenly responsible for an 8-month-old. The journey had cost me my original career path, most of my savings, and my relationship with my parents. But watching Lily's joyful play, her security and confidence evident in every movement, I knew without doubt that I'd make the same choice again. Later, Tucking Lily into bed in her room, decorated with dinosaur decals and fairy lights, I reflected on the strange, winding path that had brought us here. Story? Mama? She requested. Her ritual for every night. Once upon a time, I began. There was a little girl named Lily who was so loved that the universe worked overtime to find her the perfect family. It wasn't the family anyone expected, but it was exactly the family she needed. Lily's eyes drooped as sleep began to claim her. Like us, she murmured. Exactly like us, I confirmed, brushing her hair back from her forehead. The most perfect, unexpected family ever. As she drifted off, I thought about the email that had changed everything 2 years ago. My parents had intended it as an abandonment, but it had actually been the beginning of the most meaningful journey of my life. Sometimes family is defined not by who leaves, but by who stays. Not by blood, but by choice. Not by obligation, but by love. And sometimes, the greatest betrayals lead to the greatest blessings. If my story has touched you in any way, I'd love to hear about your own unexpected family journeys in the comments below. Have you ever had to step up when someone else stepped out? What life lessons have your family challenges taught you? Please like this video if you found value in my experience, and subscribe for more authentic stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our most beautiful destinations. Thank you for witnessing my journey from abandoned aunt to devoted mother. And remember that family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who you build your life around. Until next time, love the people who choose to stay.